Welcome to yet another episode of Dexian Talks, the Global Capability Center Leader Series, where we bring you conversations with the incredible leaders designing the next chapter of GCC from India to the world. Today's guest has spent over 2 decades at the intersection of finance, strategy, risk, and global operations. He has established and operated over 30 GCCs for some of the world's most iconic brands, from PepsiCo, Delta Airlines, to 3AM and AB InBev during his time at ANSR. He has led finance, FP&A, procurement and governance at the companies like Wipro, AOL, Target, LSEG, and now drives the GCC and talent business as Chief Business Officer at NLB Services. Welcoming our esteemed guest, Mr. Abhilash Raghavan. Joining him in the conversation is Mr. Kumar Rajgopalan, the Country Head and Vice President of Dexian India, and Mr. Anilesh, the GCC Advisor. Let's just hear it from our leaders.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Raghavan. So it's been a pleasure. And thanks, Anilesh, for introducing. And we have been privileged to have you here. So we are trying to bring in a GCC concept because most of the people, especially in mid-market segment, countries outside India, wanted to establish in India. But in the mid-market segment, still there is a hesitancy in terms of what they can start. So the discussion is to kind of have someone who has already well established in the GCC or the GCC leaders to come out and talk about like how they build certain GCCs here. So that experience probably can go to some of these mid-market segment companies and encourage them to come into India. So of course, I can't be more precise here in terms of how this can probably translate into actual actions by some of these companies, but at least it can provoke a thought that they can come here. And two gentlemen here, in fact, have established a lot more. And from the Dexian Talk, I wanted to introduce myself. I'm Kumar Rajgopalan, leading the Dexian India GCC, and Anilesh is my advisor, mentor, and co-building some of the GCCs here.
Thank you. First of all, thanks so much for inviting me for this session on Dexian Talks. Just a little bit about myself here. You know, I'm privileged to be now associated with Dexian and you Kumar. We are looking at exploring the overall mid-market segment, and therefore we thought it would be good to get some inputs from somebody such as yourself. And you and I, Abhilash, we've also worked together in the past. So I'm hoping this is going to be an open and a very candid conversation, drawing upon your experience as well as mine.
Well, thank you, Anilesh. Thank you, Kumar. It's a pleasure to be here. When Anilesh and I were talking a couple of weeks back, and he said that there is this opportunity to sort of come and share my experience, I was more than willing to do that because I think, like I said, I think the best way for all of us to sort of grow and understand is to share our respective experiences. And I think there is a lot that's happening around us from a GCC perspective. And I think, through this next 45 minutes, I'll be more than happy to share my experiences, having worked in GCCs and also been a part of a couple of organizations that operate and enable GCCs, for multinational companies, right? So my name is Abhilash Raghavan, born and raised in Bangalore. I've been in the industry for about 25 years, of which 23 have been with GCCs, right? The first 2 years of Wipro, that's where I sort of, started my corporate career. But yeah, I think, really excited to share this time with you guys and share my experience. And I'll be very authentic and candid and, say it as I see. And then hopefully it is very engaging conversation and helpful.
Of course, like for me, the interest is, in fact, when Anilesh wanted to kind of bring you into this discussion, the first thing which I saw is a finance background. I'm from a finance background, so it's probably one of the things which hits me. I really wanted to meet this person so that we can have a conversation with the GCC. Of course, I'll start with the question on the finance itself, because most of the GCCs, when they started, initially it's all about cost arbitrage. Do you see as a finance person, is a cost arbitrage is the prime mover for any of the GCCs, or it's much beyond?
See, you can't take that away from the equation. Clearly, that is a given, right? But it's no longer a conversation, but that's an expectation, right? Because, as you look to establish capability in the present day, it's more around capability, right? Size does not matter, scale does not matter. All you're looking for is trying to really address the issue that the organization is facing, right? It could be transformation, it could be capability building, it could be right sizing your organization from an outsourced partner to an in-sourced capability. So it really is about solving the problem, knowing very well that if it's done well, established well, you will generate benefits, whether it's from a cost perspective or the output that's expected. So it's no longer a main driver. Of course, like every CFO, they do their due diligence. You have a business case, you have a financial model, just so that there are boundaries set, right? Because you don't want to go completely haywire and realize that it's an investment that didn't really yield necessary outcome, and it's largely to measure performance.
Okay. Anilesh, like your views on working on this, is CFO, because we both are from the finance, so from a tech background, is CFO making more decisions on this GCC, or how do you see that one, and what translated over a period of time?
It's a great question, Kumar. I think a lot depends upon what kind of company you're talking to. When we're talking about some of the large organizations, invariably they're coming to India from a transformation perspective. And that transformation perspective usually starts with cost savings. That cost savings translates into dollar savings, and you're now able to stretch the dollar to do other additional things. That's really where they're seeing the benefit. Now, when you're looking at medium and small size companies, that initiative may not necessarily be coming from the CFO side. That initiative may be coming from the tech side, where there is a pain point that they're trying to address, and that's where they're looking at coming. But as a quick follow-up, do you mind if I ask Abhilash a question?
Yeah, please.
Since you're a CFO and you've got such a lot of experience, it's you just said cost is a given, right? Is there a minimum size of a GCC that is viable in your opinion, or is that not even a question?
So, size does not matter, because especially in the mid-market segment, you have a lot of these companies being very, very clear about what they want to do, right? And they want to hire maybe 20 deep tech resources that are going to working on cutting edge technology work, right? But while I say that, now what is interesting is how do you enable them, right? Because the traditional model of building your own legal entity, having your own compliance and governance for a large team makes sense, because that overhead, a burden of compliance and managing these regulatory aspects makes sense for a large organization. But if you're a smaller organization, you have to be able to offer alternative models.
That's right.
Right, where you have a build, operate, transfer, where look, we will help you build this, right? Don't carry the burden of administrative hassles. Or we have employer of record, right, where we can hire people, put them on our payroll, but they work directly for you, because end of the day you are concerned about output and value and all of that, right? So size does not matter, but the engagement model matters a lot, because it doesn't really warrant to have the full-fledged capability for a 20-member team, because then the cost outweighs the value and capability.
Okay, in fact, I just want to add my experience on this one, because the size, I've seen some of the large companies right now, even including Oracle and others, they started with a very small office. And that's how they initially thought about it. Being India at that time, it was more a services specialist country, not into a full-fledged market for India. But now, with fourth or third largest economy growing, I think it's a market for them. So GCC, not necessarily only for services, it's to kind of build their own competency by selling within India also. It's a tough market to sell also, so it becomes much more. I think the salespeople much more efficient if they can sell it in India. But it's happening here with a lot of digital tech which is happening in the government and also in the private sectors.
Talking about size brings up another interesting question, which is, what would you be looking at different profile of a leader for a smaller, medium-sized GCC as compared to a large one?
Great question, because I think one of the advantages in a mid-market or a small GCC is you can pretty much have a global leader here.
Right.
You can have a leader who not only has the site level responsibilities, right, but also has mandates and a role to play in the vision of the organization, right, like a CIO, CTO, right, or a product officer, right, or transformation officer, a data analytics officer, AI officer. I mean, you can call it whatever. So the ability is to actually, nurture talent from here that have eventually a global mandate to really lead that forward. Because, if you look at mid-market segment, they are starting out with AI, ML, cybersecurity, product-led organizations, and so on and so forth, right? So in that sort of environment, if you have a leader who is not only responsible for the delivery of that capability, but also has a role to play at a board level or at a enterprise level, it's a phenomenal capability, right? And in fact, recently I was meeting with a leader from a company called Greenlight, which is a US-based fintech company.
Okay.
So he is actually SVP and country head.
Okay.
Right. So besides, of course, having the day-to-day responsibility from a site level perspective, but he also has a seat at the table, influencing the vision of how this company transform into the best fintech company in the next 5 years.
Okay.
So I think the ability to have a seat at the table, play that influential role in a small scale GCC is far more, because they're really lean organizations, right? So I think the impact is seen much better, acceptance is much better.
But a follow-up question on that one. So he comes from a tech background and now a professor in the GCC world. I come from a finance background, pure finance, moved into tech. And I saw yours more finance, procurement, and those areas. So all of us played a GCC leader role. So is there any specific qualification which is required to be a GCC leader? Because it goes all the way up to the top. So
yeah, I think in the present day, I think it's not necessarily about qualification. It's about having the enterprise mindset, right? First and foremost, right? Because you got to understand the organization better, followed by the business. So you can't be a generalist anymore.
Okay.
Right? Gone are the days where you can just operate as a site leader, taking care of all the day-to-day operations of the site.
That's right.
You have to have business acumen. You have to be able to have meaningful conversations, with your stakeholders, right? The second aspect is, these are all personal traits, Kumar. Of course, qualification is one aspect, which is your college degree and other things, but attributes that make a successful GCC leader is, of course, enterprise mindset, the relationship leadership. When I say that, invariably, the decision maker authority sits in the US.
okay.
And that won't change, right? Let's accept the fact it won't change.
right.
So
Being a
how do you
sponsor.
really influence without authority? You need to be able to be comfortable, sort of pushing the boundaries and asking the right questions and challenging, because at the end of the day, you're intending well, right? So influencing with authority, that's a skill that you got to possess. Third is personal traits, right? Operating in the gray, right? Being able to step out of the comfort zone, articulating the value, right? These are very, very important qualifications for somebody to be successful in the GCC space.
That's right.
So continuing on the leadership theme, it's if you take a look at all the GCCs that are already established in India, you'll see that most of them are being led by folks from India itself.
Correct.
Right. And going by the point that you just mentioned, does it therefore make sense for somebody who's setting up an operation in India to actually have an expat come in for some time? There aren't too many of those examples out there, but I just thought I'd take your opinion. And hang on, it's also, does it matter whether you're a large GCC or a medium GCC when you're looking at this kind of a decision?
I think, back in the day, unless we've seen a lot of expats coming in, and that was largely for cultural immersion.
Right.
Because you wanted to make sure that,
True.
culture fabric sort of seamlessly blends into the GCC, right? And second, of course, the fear of unknown, right? For the enterprise, they don't know what they're getting into, so they got to have somebody of their own to really be the conscience keeper, right? But this model has matured so nicely that it's now become mainstream. So everybody understands GCC, right? And what really happens. And the leadership talent also has evolved, right? Today we have a lot of enterprises and GCCs where key leadership positions are held in India.
Okay.
Right? For example, Lowe's has its CTO from India, right? We had Falabella, which is a South American retailer, where the CIO was India, and he pretty much ran the entire digital and technology roadmap and vision from India.
Okay.
Right? So I honestly don't think there is a compelling need for people to bring in expats to really establish and scale and grow. But in a way, it's good to have them come here so they can understand the art of the possible. Because there are still a lot of leaders that I talk to in the US who have no idea about India. It's bizarre, but that's the truth. Right? They don't know. I mean, they still have a very vague idea of what India can do. They're stuck in maybe a couple of decades back, right? They haven't really moved from there. So sometimes it's bringing them here, not with the purpose of us learning from them, but actually them learning from what they can actually achieve from this ecosystem is how I look at it.
Great. In fact, this one point stuck actually to relate back. Expats coming here or somebody who is nurturing from here, and the qualification or the trait which somebody wanted to have it. In fact, somebody coined a word, a GCCpreneur, like an entrepreneur, because it is you're neither a decision maker to make the full decision for the corporate, but your decision is significant enough to kind of I would say affect the corporate stream overall.
Right.
So which means that like you have to balance it.
Balance, yeah.
To how much effort, power which you need to kind of balance is very, very important.
I mean, you need to be comfortable sticking your neck out, right? And it's if something fails, you are the guy, right? I mean, the buck stops with you. So that's where a lot of them need to have the leadership attribute of being okay to stand up and say, own it, right? I own the agenda and move forward.
So buck stops with the GCC leader. How many sleepless nights you had so far?
Look, I think plenty, right? Because that's the nature of this business. And especially when I was working for my previous organization, we were ramping up. I mean, doing 3-4 clients a month, right? And invariably, these are high intense, high touch sort of business, right? Because you're working on multiple work streams. You're really stitching HR, finance, legal, tax, multiple work streams together. Things will fail, right? Because that's how things are meant to be. So you have to ensure that you have your pulse on things, because end of the day, a commitment is made on when the office opens. A commitment is made when we hire first employee, how the capability gets built. And of course, you have dependencies externally as well, regulators and so on and so forth. I think we've had sleepless nights, but I think in all that, right, I think in all the hardship and struggle and all of that, when you actually see the GCC come to life and the ribbon is cut and when you see the first set of employees walk in, is really, really gratifying, right? Because you've really brought to life the dream and the vision the customer has. And that whole experience is really, really gratifying. And I think I've had the good fortune of sort of being there and witnessing some of this for the large GCCs and of course small GCCs as well, right? So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't really dwell too much into the sleepless nights, but there's a cost of being in a business like this.
But how much you enjoy, of course, the pressure always puts a lot of sleepless nights. But like at the end of the day, when the opportunity or the success happens, for both, it's like kind of we would be happy to share, because that would give a lot more opportunities for many other people.
So the very fact that I'm in this role today, which I could have pretty much walked out of, I was with ANSR, right? Pioneers in this business. So I've spent about 8 years and had to make a decision to leave, and then join London Stock Exchange, one of the GCCs in Bangalore. Spent about a year, but realized that my heart was still, in this space, right? I didn't want to be in the GCC space, but I wanted to be an operator, right? Because this is a different experience and thrill altogether. So I'm back here. That tells you how passionate I am and how kicked I am about this. But of course, will not do a lot of things that I did in my previous avatar. Learn from that and say, okay, how do we do differently? Don't really have to burn the midnight oil. There are ways that you can still manage this sensibly and do things different.
Let me ask you a slightly provocative question, right? The Indian IT outsourcing industry, stalwarts like TCS and Infosys and Cognizant and Wipro and HCL, how are they perceiving this onslaught of GCCs entering the country?
I think about 5 years back, let's say even 3 years back, they were in denial mode. They just kept saying that, look, this is not going to sustain. We'll eventually come back to outsourcing. We are, going to see that trend, come back to, the traditional mode of leveraging the third parties for getting work done. But now, it's really not the scene. The scene is very different, where this is now the next wave of the services industry, where companies are going to come, set up their own, build capabilities, relatively decrease the reliance on third parties for obvious reasons, because control, cost, quality, and so on and so forth.
And IP.
So that denial mode is gone now.
Okay.
And therefore you see everybody setting up their own GCC practice. So that is a testament to the fact that they have to now, acknowledge, and, be part of the wave. And trying to build their own capability, within their own organization. So everybody, I think Infosys, TCS, Wipro, Hexaware, Capgemini, Cognizant, everybody's got a GCC vertical now.
True.
Right?
But I'm going to continue on this provocative trend just for a moment, right? Which is to say that what everyone is talking about GCCs, what should a GCC focus on? And we all say, core capabilities. Right? That's really what you should focus on. If that's the case, and more GCCs are being set up that focus on core capabilities, does it mean that some of the IT services vendors are going to be relegated to non-core activities?
Yes and no, Anilesh, right? So the obvious is, of course, some non-core will go into the services, because that's quite obvious, right? But even in the core, it's a choice that the company has between build and partner, right? Because there are certain initiatives where the time and effort to build it in-house is far long and cumbersome, right? It takes you time to sort of build something out. But if you want to really hit the market soon, right? If you want to get to the outcome sooner, then potentially a partnership doesn't hurt. Therefore, experts will come in, with their capability, but the way that they engage will change from a traditional outsourcing format. So this will be co-owned, right? With a clear plan that, look, you come, build this for us, right? While we will actually build our own team, there will be some sort of a parallel operation, and eventually they will take over and run it, right? So you're actually seeding that capability through a third party, right? With a clear mandate that ownership will sit with the customer. So the way that the contract is structured, the terms, the framework will all differ going forward, but they will have a role to, because these guys have built that capability over a period of time, and they have the size and scale to really throw the kitchen sink at it, as they say, which some of the new GCCs can't do it right off the bat. So you bring in best of both worlds.
Fair point.
So in fact, one of the questions which always comes into my mind, being part of this GCC and for the US principles, generally, what steps? Because there is no thumb rule that to make it success, this is one thing which you need to do. But everybody wants to make it success. At some point of time, is kind of lacks the direction also. Being in this industry and successfully managed GCCs established. If a new entrant who is coming here, so to use what is the success means, what should they think about it, and how do they plan it to kind of make it happen? Is there anything which a guideline or any of those sorts would be helpful?
I think from a enterprise perspective, from a customer perspective, it's clear articulation of what they want, right? You just can't go with a vague idea of what I want to do because there's a fear of missing out, right? You can't have that be the reason for you to do a GCC, because then it's a disaster.
Okay.
So you have to have a clear purpose on why you want to build a GCC. So it's always that vision, right? And well articulated, because it can't just be blue sky thinking and then expect teams to execute on it, right? The second thing is sponsorship, right? And this is age-old requirement that no matter what phase you are, you need to have a sponsor, because end of the day, the evangelist or the flag bearer sits in the US.
Yes.
So you need to have a sponsor at all points, right? And third thing is, you have to come here for talent reasons. Like, keep that as the core, right? Sure. You should know that in India there are about 4,000 technology resources. You can't go wrong, right? You can go broad, you can go deep. It's available in India, right? So being very clear in terms of what job functions move and having a method to the madness, right? Like, a lot of times they push broken processes, right? They, tend to, do it in piecemeal, right? And when you have these piecemeal approach or you push broken processes, things will fail, right? Because one, the GCC is new, they don't have the context, and when they try to start working on it, there is resistance on the other side, right? And mind you, I think it's a very sensitive matter even today, right? Because when you set up a GCC, it's job loss somewhere. It could be at a third-party area or it's at the headquarters level, right? So that change management piece is very important. That's why I said the sponsorship, very strong change management process, clear articulation of value, and having that relentless pursuit for good talent and good capability. If you have, I think, these fundamental things, operators like us who've been there in the space will take care of everything else, because then it's putting together the whole Lego, right? It's like a Lego piece where you have multiple things, you put it together, it'll work perfectly well. Whether it's your infrastructure, whether it is your talent, policy procedures, regulatory aspects, because those are tried and tested. I think it's no longer a debate now. Things are pretty much stable and predictable in many ways.
I'll come to the talent part.
Sure.
I think there's a lot debated about the talent side of it. But to flip to your side, Anilesh, I know because it's a lot of experience comes from all three of us, so that's why I'm coming to that one. So what's one piece of advice you want to give if somebody wants to set up here? Is that beyond vision, or is it a long term which they need to think about it, or can they achieve in a short term and say that, like, okay, now my ROI is there, I'll keep investing. So how do they materialize that concept?
In addition to all the things that Abhilash has talked about, you need to have the right sponsor, for example, in the parent organization. You need to have the right GCC leader, because it's going to be that partnership that's going to develop what I call a global operating model, which is going to make the overall GCC a success.
Trust.
Exactly. And from a timeline perspective, I think a lot depends upon the objectives that you really want to set up. And some companies have done it faster than others. Some companies have taken a longer time. The reality is that now more and more companies that are coming in are realizing that there's enough talent and experience on the ground to move faster than the earlier companies used to. So while I'm not going to put a specific timeline onto it, it is possible to achieve, and I don't like to use the term ROI, because that's again a very, very finance perspective, saying it all automatically talks about the bottom line.
It's a natural flow.
Yeah.
I can't help.
You can achieve cost savings very quickly, but if you want to create core capabilities that are going to impact competitiveness, it's probably going to take you a couple of years at the least.
Fantastic.
That's really what I've typically seen. And to carry on to another aspect of it, which is, and I'm going to talk about something that you mentioned, Abhilash. You talked about the sponsorship part. One of the things that happens is sponsors change over a period of time.
True.
Right?
Yeah.
The GCC leader changes over a period of time.
True.
How do you make sure that the operating model reflects the changing realities as you go forward? The operating model itself has to be a dynamically varying component of the overall thing. How do you ensure, and that's my follow-up question to you, how do you ensure that a GCC remains embedded as part of an organization strategy regardless of the changes in leadership?
I think it goes back to the second point Anilesh made around the quality of GCC leadership, right? And this goes back to the first question on what are the qualifications of a good leader. It's very true that the sponsor can change, right? It's a very dynamic environment. Business environment can change, right? So in the world where we're living with constant disruption, things are bound to happen, right? Therefore, that GCC leadership team, and it's not one individual, but a group of individuals that are either domain experts or functional experts, leadership, they have to be able to constantly tell the story, because a lot of us, at least this is my experience of having witnessed it ever since AOL days, we're too nice.
True.
Right? We don't want to call a spade a spade. We worry about hurting people, right? That's somewhere our DNA, right? That's how we are culturally brought up to not challenge.
Is that what built the scale also for us here?
Right? And so what really happens is that you got to be able to take pride in speaking the story, right? And articulate it well, because they got to see the impact. So it's all about dashboards, what you've done, how is the team, sort of adding value, contributing to the broader cause. Because as you make this part of your operating model where it gets communicated on a frequent basis, then it starts to resonate and register with the broader organization, right? And then you have to build a ecosystem of leaders within the state side as well, US as well, headquarters side as well, where success begets success. If you see that a part of the organization is successful with a particular, initiative, how do you take it back and really showcase, right? So I think those things really help you with really building that platform that potentially can sustain over a period of time.
Great point. Actually, this one thing I've seen with many people, in the name of humility, they don't showcase what they have done. And that does not go well. In fact, it's not been presented well.
We viewed as a people pleaser, and it has a double-edged sword.
That's right.
But I'm going to ask you a question on this one, Kumar. See, you're in the talent solutions side of the business, right? And you guys have been operating for some time, and you're supporting several GCCs as well.
That's right.
Have you seen a change in the talent over the past several years that you've been in this business, in terms of their approach to being a little more vociferous, to being a little more globally savvy? Now we've got a talent base of 2 million in the GCC industry, so we've got a lot of folks to actually pick from. True. But do you see any changes taking place?
It's a lot. The two areas which I really looked at it is, one is the adaptability. It's very less right now. So because earlier when someone wants to, so for example, from finance procurement, from IT and other areas which have gone into even the professorship, from finance to IT, so and multiple technologies, we don't want to limit ourselves. We want to learn everything, and we want to keep moving forward. And that's one of the key success factors for us in the initial period. But now, the current generation, I think they are stuck to one technology and say, I don't want to move on. This is what it is.
You've seen that happening.
Yes, right? And they are very particular even in the interviews that, like, okay, do you want to give me this role, or do you want to give me this technology, or do you want to? I don't want to change. Like suddenly put me from a Microsoft to some other technology. I don't want to do that one. Let me limit myself to this one. I'm specialist. I don't know. That's the word which keeps coming back.
Interesting.
And it also limits the recruiter's ability to talk more. It has a good side and bad side. The good side is, I think probably in the last 5-7 years in the past, there were a lot of resume changes happens for people. Now it's like kind of very, very limited. People don't change resumes too quickly because they wanted to stuck to what they wanted to do. That's also a good side and bad side. That's one area which we have seen in the recruiting space. The second one is, earlier we were more focused on the location is one of the barriers for us. Like, we wanted to stay. Either I work in Chennai or Bangalore, or then the next stop should be Seattle or San Francisco.
Right.
There is no in between. But now the current generation can go more on anywhere. It does not matter. From my current salary, if you are offering me 25% more, I don't mind. Like, I can move to any place, tier 2 city, tier 3 cities. Nothing bothers me at this point of time. That's the change which is happening, and that's one of the reasons for GCC success. Because now the GCCs are coming up multiple places because of the mobility of labor which is happening. It becomes easier for them to kind of adapt to that one.
Very, very interesting.
Yeah, and absolutely.
And we spoke about talent. Now, let me again on the topic of talent, specific to leadership. Do you see a new generation of leaders emerging here in India, and therefore what is the difference in this new generation of leaders as compared to the earlier ones when it comes to taking on some of these global roles and responsibilities?
Again, it's a, if I want to put it very blunt, what's missing at this point of time, the values to some extent is coming down a bit. What we saw in our period, it's whether we like it or not, like when we say a word, does not matter. I asked that sleepless nights question. So you stay put and ensure that the problem is solved, only then you walk out of that place. So, but now is like there are too many shortcuts, including AI is playing a major role into some other coding. So too many shortcuts to come, and that's kind of eroding the, I would say, the leadership ability to manage the team, because you are not hands-on to know fully about the fact. But to compensate that one, now during our period, there is no Anilesh to teach in IIMB. There are no big schools to kind of get you into the management side of it. It's out of practical experience, so you have to spend the time. But now it's like you get the polish through some of these B schools and some of these institutions, larger institutions, and get the opportunity to talk to leaders. They get more versatile in terms of the leadership. So it's also coming up. So they catch up very quickly through all these interactions. So on the talent side, so we've been talking about it. There's a lot of pushback or a lot of questions being raised on the India talent side of it, and especially from US when they now started working on it. They think that like what 4 people can do here can actually be done by 1 person. To that extent, is like kind of they in an 8-hour window. There's a lot of time which is being spent. They're trying to learn, and we are trying to employ the professionals, but unfortunately we are not getting that quality stuff which is happening. Too many times this question comes. So my question is it a mindset, or do we need to change anything here to kind of make more attractive?
I'm not very sure if I totally understand the problem statement. But if it is about the inhibition or the resistance that is on the hiring manager to find quality talent, I don't think that's true.
Okay.
It then possibly is about how well the TA team is doing good job in positioning, right? Because like we said, I mean, the talent pool in the GCC space, if we're talking specifically, it is large enough, right? And they go, like I said, they go broad, deep, whichever way that you want to go. So there is talent available. Now, it is about your talent strategy in terms of how you want to go about building that plan, right? Because there was a time that when we would look to hire for GCCs, you restrict that pool to only to GCCs, which means that you keep hiring within GCCs because you think that they are culturally empowered, and so they understand GCC, therefore the fitment and then the ability to, perform well is therefore relatively higher, and better assurance. But I think now what's happening is that pool has widened to include talent from startups, right? Talent from services organizations and GCCs.
Okay.
The pool is much wider now, in my opinion, right? Because now there's no hesitation in terms of hiring a talent from a service provider organization, right? Now they will more likely come into the GCC because they get to experience a different culture. The reward is very different compared to how it gets sort of managed at a service provider organization, right? From the product and startup organizations, you bring in the best of brains because they have worked on core problems and they have the capability, right? And GCC, of course, they have, in certain cases, most GCCs have actually worked on core problems. They actually see the impact of what they do. So I don't know, where this perception is coming from, but absolutely, I think today you have the ability to hire at scale, the ability to sort of, go deep if you're looking at very specific roles and skill sets. And again, if I'm talking about GCC from a customer lens, I think it's no longer only India, right? There are other markets as well, right? Because at the end of the day, do what is right for the organization.
True.
right? You don't have to force fit a solution because this is the way to go.
Sure.
Like if you're looking at, let's say, engineering, cybersecurity, mid-tech kind of roles, you can go to Eastern Europe, right? Or some areas like Latam, Mexico, and Costa Rica. Vietnam is emerging as another hub from an engineering and tech perspective. So I think talent in general is widely available. Depends on what you want to do and what your target market is.
Okay.
I don't know if Anilesh, if you have thoughts on it.
So I agree, but I think there are instances where you have and there are many of those instances where you have a fair amount of resistance to change. So this resistance to change in the mindset of somebody who's doing this for the first time translates into finding fault with the person who's been hired on the ground, saying that the productivity is low, the skills are not right, I need a different type of a person. So, and most GCCs do go through this cycle. You'll find someone or the other out there saying that, this is not working for me. And that will, the reason for that they cite is skills. I need 4 people, as you were saying, I need 4 people to work instead of the 1 person that I always had. That's generally RTC. Now that being said, there is a finite time to productivity. When you hire a new person on the ground, you're no longer working with somebody who's been experienced in that particular system, let us say, for the past 20 years. Obviously, there is going to be a little bit of a loss of experience out there, a little bit of a loss of productivity, but that very quickly gets compensated. And in fact, you'll start finding that the Indian resources are being more productive than the ones that folks are already used to working with. So that's the interesting part of it that we see. But yes, the RTC or the resistance to change part of it does create this kind of impression, undoubtedly.
I know. So one last question. What's next after GCC?
For me or for...
No, generally. In the
I don't
market.
know. I don't have the crystal ball to go beyond GCC, but I think the way that I look at it, I think it's time to do away with this term GCC, right? I think let's talk about target as target US, target India, lows as lows US, lows India, and remove this GCC because it's doing injustice to the model, in my mind, right? Because it's now essentially your own. So on one hand, you call it that this, I want to control, I want to have access to my talent and this is mine, then don't give it, and I'm sure this is done by industry bodies and to give it a segmentation.
True.
But I think if I were to forecast 5 years from now, with the kind of wave that we're riding, this will become essentially one way of companies globally expanding. And I hope at some point it will also lead to businesses coming to India. Like how, for example, Lululemon, right? They built their technology hub. They're also looking at expanding their business in India, retail business in India. So I hope this just promotes that wave of business coming into India, going beyond services into actual manufacturing or business being set up in a market like India, because because you have talent. They are the ones solving for your business problems. Right. So might as well set up your business here, right? And I'm hoping that regulation helps them to do this seamlessly, like how for services it is, single window clearance and it is, direct investment. There's no need for partnerships or things like that, right? So long as regulation allows, I think the possibilities are many.
Well, I completely agree. I mean, from the very beginning, I've hated this term GCC, and I'm very strong about that. When I say I really dislike that term because it doesn't do justice to the potential that is out there. There's no two thoughts about it. So I think as the industry evolves and grows further, every company is going to decide what they're going to call their own organization. There are some companies that call their organizations in India, they call them the innovation hub. Somebody calls it the acceleration center. Somebody calls it something else. So-and-so India, like Lowe's India, for example. And that's really how we look at it. I see a GCC, and I have to use the same term for the moment, as being a node in a distributed enterprise. And this distributed enterprise, which is there, could be across the globe, where you have different capabilities working seamlessly together to provide a core capability or competitive edge to the parent organization is really where we're headed out here. And I think that's really going to be the name of the game.
Fantastic. And then with the market which is going, so I think probably GCC has kindled some of the dreams for some of the people to work in a large corporations, and also a mindset that like we should build a large enterprise to serve the globe overall. A lot of companies which is going to come in India by the Indian entrepreneurs, because a GCC leader at some point of time will become an entrepreneur, a GCCpreneur to entrepreneur. So it's a possibility. Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure.
My pleasure. So it's been a wonderful talking to you, both of you. In fact, this series really wanted to again reiterate some of the mid-market people wanted to look at it. India is a safe haven for their startups, and I think this series would give them some valuable insights into what they should look for in India.
Hopefully, I think hopefully we did justice to this. So yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity. Wonderful talking to you. And
Definitely, we'll try catching up in one more session. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you so
being
much.
part of Dexian
absolutely,
Talk.
my pleasure. Completely.
Yes, thanks a lot.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much,
Abhilash.
Abhilash.
It's a pleasure.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
This was some really insightful conversation from our leaders. We brought you this episode from IIMB Bangalore. Thank you.
We are Dexian, in the business for good.